I am Professor Dr. Rose Errol, 68 years old, a retired academic, the proud president of the Minerva Foundation, and an author of several seminal works on societal evolution. My life's work, indeed my very being, is dedicated to the undeniable truth that women represent the zenith of biological and intellectual evolution, and that men, with their inherent proclivity for violence and their demonstrably flawed genetic makeup, are nothing more than a lower caste, a necessary but unfortunate biological footnote. It is my unwavering conviction that a sterile, woman-led order is not merely desirable, but imperative for the survival and genuine advancement of humanity. My days at the Minerva Foundation are meticulously structured. Every detail, from the minimalist, chrome and glass aesthetic of our headquarters to the precisely scheduled interdepartmental meetings, reflects my philosophy of absolute efficiency and the rejection of anything deemed superfluous or emotionally charged. My personal office, high above the bustling streets, offers a panoramic view that mirrors my own expansive vision, clear, unobstructed, and reaching far beyond the petty squabbles of traditional society. On a rare occasion, a fleeting glimpse of a construction site or a traffic jam below would remind me of the chaotic, masculine-dominated world I strive daily to correct. Around me, my assistants move with silent deference. They are, of course, men, carefully selected, utterly obedient, and devoid of the aggressive posturing so common among their kind. Young Mr. Khan, my senior administrative assistant, currently stood by my desk, his posture a picture of deferential readiness, a delicate leather satchel clutched in his hand. He understood his place, as they all did. These young men, well-educated yet perfectly compliant, served as a living testament to the possibility of taming the unruly male spirit, or at least, harnessing it for more productive, less destructive ends. They carry my bags, they manage my schedule, and they never, ever, voice an unsolicited opinion. They are, in essence, domesticated symbols. My observations of the modern workforce had become increasingly concerning. There was a palpable softness, a lack of genuine esprit de corps that permeated even the most promising of our dements. My foundation, dedicated to pioneering research in sustainable technologies and advanced social engineering, was a crucible for the future, and yet, I saw individuals retreating into their personal cocoons, failing to forge the robust, interconnected networks necessary for truly groundbreaking innovation. They worked diligently during official hours, certainly, but the moment the clock struck 5, they would vanish, each into their own isolated sphere, only to resurface the next morning, often looking fatigued. This was not the unified, driven force I envisioned. This was not how progress was made. True synergy, I reasoned, demanded more than mere professional interaction. It demanded a shared, collective experience, a deeper understanding of one another beyond the sterile confines of project timelines and quarterly reports. It demanded a community, albeit one carefully cultivated under my direction. This deficiency had prompted my latest initiative, a series of mandatory socialization events. I had presented the idea to the Foundation's board, a board, I might add, comprised almost entirely of brilliant women I had personally groomed, as a crucial investment in corporate culture, a means to foster collaboration and loyalty. Naturally, there was no dissent. The first of these, I decided, would be held at the Minerva Auto Gallery, one of our newest acquisitions. It was a space I found particularly intriguing, a cavernous hall of polished concrete and gleaming chrome, showcasing a curated collection of high-performance electric vehicles. The cold, precise beauty of these machines, engineered for efficiency and power, felt like a fitting backdrop for the kind of refined social interaction I sought to cultivate. The evening of the inaugural event arrived, and I surveyed the scene at the Minerva Auto Gallery with a critical eye. The vast space, usually reserved for displaying our foundation's cutting-edge automotive investments, was now subtly transformed. Soft, strategic lighting highlighted the sleek contours of a prototype self-driving supercar, then a high-efficiency urban transport concept. It was all very modern, very clean, very us. Waiters, primarily the younger, Less assertive male staff from various dements moved through the sparse crowd, offering carefully chosen organic canapés and artisanal sparkling water. Alcohol, of course, was strictly prohibited. Clarity of thought was paramount. My philosophy extended even to trivialities like refreshments. Anything that dulled the senses or encouraged uninhibited, potentially irrational behavior was to be avoided. I stood by the entrance, a silent sentinel, observing the arrivals. My impeccably tailored charcoal suit, custom-made, provided a sharp contrast to the muted tones many of the employees had chosen for their after-hours attire. Most wore expressions that hovered somewhere between polite curiosity and thinly veiled resignation. I watched them filter in, shaking hands, exchanging superficial pleasantries. It was a chore for them, I could tell. They had just completed a demanding workday, and their natural inclination, undoubtedly, was to retreat to their homes, to their trivial personal pursuits. But greatness, I often reminded myself, demanded sacrifice. This wasn't about fun in the conventional, puerile sense. This was about forging a collective identity, about aligning individual wills with the grander vision of the Minerva Foundation. My gaze fell upon a cluster of junior researchers, their nervous laughter echoing a little too loudly in the high-ceilinged gallery. One young woman, Dr. Ilara Vance, a brilliant astrophysicist we had recruited from Cambridge, was attempting to engage a reticent male colleague in conversation about the torque distribution of one of our concept vehicles. Ilara was one of my star protégés, sharp, analytical, unburdened by the emotional complexities that plague lesser minds. I had high hopes for her. The young man, on the other hand, a quiet data scientist named Mr. Ben Carter, merely nodded, offering monosyllabic responses, his eyes scanning the exit. He was competent, undeniably so, his algorithms indispensable to our predictive modeling projects, but he lacked the fire, the innate drive I saw in Ilara. A typical male, brilliant in his narrow specialization, but lacking the comprehensive vision, the holistic engagement. It was a consistent pattern I observed. I drifted through the gathering, a phantom of authority, my presence enough to temper any budding enthusiasm into respectful quietude. A few employees, eager to demonstrate their commitment, would approach me, offering effusive praise for the event, for the foundation, for my leadership. I would offer a curt nod, a brief, penetrating gaze, acknowledging their efforts without indulging their need for validation. This was not a popularity contest. This was an exercise in cultural engineering. I noted how quickly conversations would die down when I drew near, how postures would straighten, how eyes would avoid mine or meet them with an almost robotic politeness. It confirmed my assessment. They were not comfortable, not truly relaxed. Good. Comfort breeds complacency. Discomfort, judiciously applied, often stimulates growth. Professor Errol, a truly magnificent collection, as always, Mr. Khan murmured at my side, appearing as if from thin air. The staff seemed to be engaging quite robustly. I merely arched an eyebrow. Robustly, Mr. Khan? Or merely complying robustly? He quickly corrected himself. Complying, Professor. Indeed. Their commitment to the Foundation's vision is evident. My lips thinned into a barely perceptible line. Commitment, Mr. Khan, is proven not by attendance, but by transformation. Let us see what fruits these enforced gatherings bear. I then moved towards the display featuring our hydrogen-powered prototype, knowing full well that any true understanding of its groundbreaking engineering would escape most of these people, particularly the men who often fetishize the superficial aspects of automotive power rather than its clean, intelligent utility. As the evening wore on, the forced smiles grew a little more strained. The conversations, while technically ongoing, seemed to lack genuine animation. They were performing, and I was their demanding audience. Ilara, to her credit, continued to circulate, attempting to draw people out, embodying the very spirit of the interdimensional cohesion I preached. Ben Carter, however, had retreated to a corner, ostensibly admiring a vehicle, but I noticed his frequent glances at his watch. Such a lack of stamina, such a fragile boundary between professional obligation and personal indulgence. It was precisely this fragility I sought to harden. My internal monologue reaffirmed my conviction. This initiative was not just necessary, it was an act of profound pedagogical importance. They needed to learn that their individual lives, their petty desires for private time, were secondary to the collective ambition of the Minerva Foundation. To think otherwise was a sign of intellectual and emotional immaturity, a weakness I intended to eradicate. The series of mandatory events continued, each carefully curated to provide a unique team-building experience, though I eschewed such puerile terminology. Following the success, as I defined it, of the gallery event, the next month saw us, at a cultural immersion workshop, a demonstration of traditional women's crafts, of course, followed by a mandatory discussion on historical female innovation. The month after, a rigorous physical challenge at a local climbing gym, emphasizing mental fortitude and collaborative problem-solving, all under my watchful eye. The locations varied, but the underlying principle remained rigid. Dissipation was non-negotiable. I observed the evolution of their engagement. The initial forced smiles had given way to something more subtle, a passive resistance that manifested in various forms. Punctuality, once a given, began to erode. Employees would arrive precisely 5 minutes late, just enough to be noticeable without incurring overt reprimand. They would disperse the moment the official closing remarks were made, sometimes even a few minutes prior, leaving me to survey a rapidly emptying room. Their contributions to the mandatory discussion segments became increasingly anodyne, generalized, devoid of true intellectual fervor or personal insight. When prodded, they would offer boilerplate responses, carefully chosen to be unassailable and utterly uninspiring. It was a collective shrug, articulated through silence and polite compliance. My frustration mounted with each passing week. How dare they not appreciate the profound opportunity one was affording them? I was investing in their holistic development, cultivating a superior corporate culture, and they responded with this insipid lethargy. It was a clear demonstration of the very softness I aimed to eradicate. They were comfortable in their mediocrity, clinging to their illusions of private life and personal boundaries like a security blanket. Such concepts were for the weak, for those who lacked the vision to see beyond their immediate, petty needs. I focused my attention particularly on Dr. Elara Vance and Mr. Ben Carter. Elara, my bright astrophysicist, was showing the first subtle cracks in her previously unshakable composure. While still outwardly compliant and attempting to rally her colleagues, I noticed a certain weariness in her eyes, a slight tremor in her voice when she was called upon to speak. She was a woman of immense potential, but even she, it seemed, was not entirely immune to the subtle erosion of spirit I was witnessing. It vexed me. I had selected her precisely for her strength, her intellectual rigor. And Ben Carter, the data scientist, had become almost spectral. He attended, yes, always, but his presence was a mere physical shell. His eyes held a distant, almost haunted look, as if his mind resided miles away, engaged in calculations entirely unrelated to our team-building exercises. He would occasionally glance at his phone under the table, a fleeting act of defiance that did not escape my notice. Such blatant disrespect for the present moment, for the collective experience, was galling. During a particularly arduous wilderness survival skills workshop, a mandatory weekend retreat that had, predictably, elicited an unprecedented number of prior commitments and sudden illnesses, I confronted Ben directly. We were huddled around a pitiful attempt at a fire, constructed by a particularly inept team of male engineers, shivering despite the ostensibly team-built shelter. Mr. Carter, I stated, my voice cutting through the crackle of damp wood, your engagement, or lack thereof, has been duly noted. Do you find these activities to be beneath your intellectual capabilities? His head snapped up, startled. No, Professor Errol. Not at all. I simply find it difficult to disconnect from my work, from my research. I scoffed. Disconnect? This is your work, Mr. Carter. Cultivating a robust professional network, honing your collaborative instincts, demonstrating your commitment to the Minerva ethos, these are all integral to your contribution. Or do you believe your algorithms create themselves? He stammered, "No, Professor. Of course not. I understand the importance. It's just the cumulative effect. The hours. My personal time is becoming negligible." I stared at him, my expression unwavering. "Personal time, Mr. Carter, is a luxury afforded to those who have contributed enough to earn it. Your contribution, thus far, is measured by your output, not your comfort. I expect full commitment, always." He lowered his gaze, defeated. Another male brought into line, I thought, a minor victory. But the weary look in his eyes lingered, a subtle accusation I chose to ignore. My frustration, however, continued to simmer. Their silent protests, their passive resistance, was an affront to my vision. I saw it as a profound ingratitude, a childish refusal to embrace the superior culture I was painstakingly crafting for them. They clung to their personal lives, a messy, inefficient concept that often led to emotional entanglements and distracted focus. My design was cleaner, more logical, more productive. Why couldn't they see that? My female colleagues on the board, while supportive, would occasionally voice gentle concerns about burnout, a term I found rather melodramatic. Burnout, I would retort, is a symptom of insufficient mental fortitude, not overwork. The great minds of history were not deterred by a few extra hours. I was balancing historical inequality, pushing them, particularly the men, beyond their inherited limitations. The breaking point arrived with the announcement of the Minerva Annual Synergy Summit. I had planned it to be a crowning achievement of our mandatory socialization program, an intensive, 3-day retreat at a remote, Foundation-owned lodge, far from urban distractions. It would involve a rigorous schedule of strategic workshops, physical challenges, and, of course, extensive informal networking sessions well into the evenings. Attendance was, naturally, mandatory for all senior staff and promising junior talent, including Alara and Ben. The announcement was met with a palpable silence that descended upon the entire foundation. Emails flowed into my office, polite but insistent, citing prior engagements, family emergencies, even pre-booked medical procedures. Mr. Khan, looking more stressed than usual, compiled a spreadsheet of the excuses, presenting it to me with a worried frown. "Professor Errol, the resistance to the secular event seems more pronounced. Perhaps a less intensive schedule." I fixed him with a cold stare. "Resistance, Mr. Khan, is merely a test of conviction. This Synergy Summit is precisely what is needed to break through this adolescent recalcitrance. These individuals have forgotten the fundamental truth. They exist to serve the Minerva Foundation's grander purpose. Their personal lives are subordinate." The day before the summit, as I reviewed the final attendance list, I received 2 separate meeting requests, both marked urgent. One was from Dr. Alara Vance, the other from Mr. Ben Carter. My internal barometer registered a flicker of annoyance. Such last-minute requests were inefficient. I granted them, scheduling them back-to-back. Alara arrived first, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her usually precise buns slightly askew. Her eyes, typically bright with intellectual fire, were dulled, haunted by a deep exhaustion. "Professor Errol," she began, her voice steady despite the visible strain, "I must speak with you about the Synergy Summit." "Yes, Dr. Vance?" I inquired, leaning back in my chair, arms crossed, my posture conveying absolute authority. "I trust you're prepared for a stimulating and productive 3 days." She swallowed hard. "Professor, with all due respect, I cannot attend. And I must, with regret, tender my resignation from the Minerva Foundation, effective immediately." My mind registered a momentary blankness, a glitch in the carefully constructed logic of my world. "Resignation? Dr. Vance, you are one of our most promising talents. This is preposterous. Is this about the extended hours? The demands? It's about the relentless demand on my personal life, Professor," she articulated, her voice rising slightly. "My private time has ceased to exist. Every moment outside of core work hours is now dictated by a mandatory event, a team-building exercise, a Synergy Summit. I came to Minerva to contribute to groundbreaking science, not to live in a perpetual corporate social experiment. And yet, Dr. Vance, I countered, my voice regaining its customary steel. True groundbreaking work demands a unified front, a collective spirit. Your individual comfort is secondary to the pursuit of excellence. I had hoped you, of all people, would understand that. I felt a peculiar sting of betrayal. Ilara, my intellectual daughter, my protégé, exhibiting such weakness. She shook her head slowly. Excellence cannot be forced, Professor. It thrives on passion, on well-being, on respect for the individual. I am exhausted. My passion for my work here has been extinguished. I need to reclaim my life. I have found another opportunity where my boundaries will be respected. I dismissed her with a wave of my hand, a gesture of profound disappointment. Very well, Dr. Vance. If you choose the path of weakness over the path of greatness, so be it. The Minerva Foundation does not have space for such fragile sensibilities. She left, her shoulders slumped, but with a new resolve in her eyes. I felt a surge of cold anger. Ungrateful. Weak. Just like them all. No sooner had Ilara's footsteps faded than Mr. Ben Carter was ushered in by Mr. Khan, who looked as though he had just witnessed a minor catastrophe. Ben's usually placid expression was replaced by a grim determination. Professor Errol, he began, without preamble, I'm afraid I also have to resign. I stared at him, my initial shock quickly replaced by a furious indignation. Another one? What is this, Mr. Carter, a coordinated protest? A male rebellion? The irony of my own words was not lost on me, yet I embraced it. No, Professor, he replied, his voice surprisingly firm. This is a personal decision. My algorithms, my data models, they require immense focus, long periods of uninterrupted thought. The constant mandatory events, the enforced socialization, the expectation that my entire existence revolves around the Foundation's social calendar, it's unsustainable. I am utterly drained. My personal life has been erased, and with it, my ability to truly innovate. I cannot perform at my best under these conditions. Your best, I scoffed. Your best, Mr. Carter, is precisely what these events are designed to cultivate. To forge a stronger, more resilient intellect. Your retreat into solitude, your insistence on such rigid personal boundaries, is a weakness. You're squandering a prodigious talent for the sake of… What? A quiet evening at home. He looked directly at me, and for the first time, I saw defiance in his usually passive gaze. Yes, Professor. A quiet evening at home. Time with my family. Time for my own thoughts. Time to recharge. These are not luxuries, they are necessities for a balanced and productive life. Your demands have crushed that balance. I've accepted an offer from another institution that understands and respects this. Then go, I declared, my voice icy. The Minerva Foundation has no room for individuals who cannot align their personal ambitions with our collective vision. You are competent, Mr. Carter, but clearly lacking in the robust character necessary for true greatness. Consider your resignation accepted, effective immediately. They were gone. My two brightest, most indispensable employees, gone. My initial shock quickly morphed into a furious, defensive rationalization. They were weak. They were unworthy. They were not truly committed to the vision. Their door was a winnowing, a necessary culling of the fragile, the unaligned. It was proof that my efforts to toughen them, to elevate them, had been too much for their delicate constitutions. They were, in the end, simply not Minerva material. The immediate aftermath was, predictably, chaotic. Project stalled. Data models that only Ben could truly manage faltered. Ilara's astrophysics research, a cornerstone of our future energy initiatives, lost its momentum. The remaining staff, already wary, became even more withdrawn, more overtly passive-aggressive. Attendance at subsequent, mandatory fun events plummeted, even with my direct threats of career repercussions. People would call in sick, citing vague ailments, or simply claim unavoidable personal matters, daring me to challenge them further. The quality of their work, too, seemed to suffer, a subtle dip in precision, a collective shrug in their output. The esprit de corps I had so desperately sought to cultivate was not merely absent, it had been actively eroded, replaced by resentment and a chilling silence. I clung to my ideology with an even fiercer grip. The Foundation's difficulties, I reasoned, were not a consequence of my policies, but rather the fault of these weak-willed individuals who had left and the inadequate ones who remained. I blamed external factors, the softness of the modern generation, the pervasive influence of a society that coddled mediocrity. My blind spot grew larger, encompassing all dissenting voices, all signs of human frailty. The complementary nature of men and women, the need for balance, for compassion, for empathy, these were still weaknesses in my eyes, irrelevant to the grand design. Even the younger feminists I sometimes encountered, those who spoke of emotional labor and inclusive leadership, I dismissed as too soft, diluted versions of the true matriarchal vision. My submissive male assistants, Mr. Khan among them, now moved with a new, harried urgency. The workload had increased dramatically, and the silence in the Foundation's gleaming halls was no longer one of respectful deference, but of strained exhaustion. I saw the dark circles under Mr. Khan's eyes, the way his shoulders slumped at the end of the day, but I saw it not as a problem, but as a challenge he needed to overcome, a further test of his utility. My Foundation, designed to be a beacon of female-led sterility and efficiency, was becoming a hollow echo of my unwavering conviction. The walls of my office were adorned with my numerous awards, plaques commemorating my achievements, my published works. They reflected a life dedicated to a singular, powerful ideology. But as I sat there, overseeing the slow, inevitable decline, surrounded by the quiet hum of an increasingly ineffective organization, I couldn't help but feel a chilling sense of isolation. I had constructed a fortress of superiority, meticulously designed to exclude all that I deemed weak or inferior. And in doing so, I had inadvertently sealed myself within it, alone in my unwavering, unyielding vision.